Okay, everybody, let me turn off the fancy music here. Although, just for a second, let's give it up to Johann Sebastian Bach, some of the best stuff of all time. I am John McNertney at Green Ocean Global Advisors. I am wearing a headset today because I got some feedback on our last event that nobody needs the podcasting microphone. Sound quality is what's important to me, and so that is what I'm going to do. So let me start by kicking things off. Thank you for all of you that have chosen to attend today. I do appreciate it. Today's topic is a slightly technical topic. We're going to talk about direct indexing as a viable investment planning tool for Americans abroad, and I should say for anybody, really. So we're going to rebroadcast this on our YouTube channel afterwards because I find this to be just such an incredibly poignant topic, especially given the highly technology fueled markets that we are in today in 2023. So first off, as always, general disclosures. If you are not a client, then please consider this to be educational information only. For those of you who are a client, this is also only educational information. All legally binding work is to be performed by us when we are working one-on-one with you. So that is the nature of the general disclosure always. So, in case you don't already know me, as I've said, nice to meet you. Bom dia, boa tarde. My name is John McNertney, and I am a financial advisor. I live in San Francisco, and I live in Lisbon, Portugal, depending upon the week. So today I am in Lisbon, and it is where I practice my craft when I am doing cross-border work for individual investors. But I've been doing this job for about 20 years. In point of fact, today's topic is the product of lots of investment work that I have done for many people over the years. Yeah, if you want to know more about me, then I can tell you some stories at a later time. Today, the topic is direct indexing. Direct indexing, as I've said, as a viable investment strategy, as an important tool for people that are quote unquote modern investors, whether they are domestic investors in the United States. This topic is extremely relevant for you. Or if you are located abroad, I'm going to show you some things that hopefully will get you thinking about just how valuable it is for you there as well. So the agenda is we're going to talk about the historic nature of what direct indexing is. What kind of story has led up to this moment where individuals can invest using not just index funds, but doing direct indexing. We will talk about what it is. Then we'll talk about the advantages of direct indexing over other kinds of investments. And we'll use some concrete examples when we talk about this. And then we will talk about why it matters so much for folks who are leading a cross-border lifestyle if you're not living in the United States. And then we will talk about how to implement these strategies. So the definition, because I think always it is important to look at the specific definition. Direct indexing involves purchasing individual stocks or securities that constitute an index rather than investing in a traditional mutual fund, index fund, or an exchange traded fund, your ETF. It allows investors to economically construct a portfolio. It's very inexpensive, and that mirrors a chosen index's composition. So you want to buy the S&P 500, you can do that. And you can do that not just with an ETF or an index fund or a mutual fund, but with your own index of stocks. It provides greater control and customization over your portfolio composition. And it enables you to tailor your investments to align with personal values, with tax strategies, and with very specific financial goals. So how did we get to here? I find history very interesting because it can be revealing about where we are. How did we get here? So in the beginning, at Wall Street and Broad, The stock market was entirely run by somewhat professional brokers that were meeting with each other at the corner of Wall Street and Broad in New York City. The market makers, where they directly were raising funds so that they could inject capital into businesses that wanted to get public participants. And so, as you might imagine, this became very cliquey. There was an inside group of people that became involved with this. What we see here is the trading floor during the Great Depression is where this photo was taken. But the old school trading floor was still very much an in-person experience. You had individuals making shares available to the public. You had the public going and grabbing individual orders. It's an in-person experience that's fully brokered and by folks that look just like I do today. There's no accident that I chose to wear a tie, because a lot of my predecessors, not just in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, you guessed it, they were they were guys that dressed up in suits so that they could practice the business of selling stocks to Mr. or Mrs. Customer. So as technology evolved rapidly, things changed, but the need for capital injections at the middle of American business never changed. Modern communications technology made it possible for more customers to come onto the scene. It democratized access for money to the market. And there were a lot of big banks and notably companies like Merrill Lynch that were helping to bring the retail experience, bring Wall Street to Main Street, and in the process broaden the market of available customers, essentially. After the 80s, there came a time where a lot of this business started to go to the dot-com world. You saw a number of dot-com entities like TD Ameritrade come out and start offering a direct experience for individual customers to come online. And so what this began was a process that's in the industry referred to as fee compression. Nobody needs to pay $1,000 a trade anymore. You can now do all of this for yourself, either over the phone, online, or via fax, if you remember that moment. So the online brokerages began to proliferate at the height of this, and we saw prices begin to race down. Now, in the 90s, we started to see companies like Charles Schwab really institutionalize this. And what we have here, just as an interesting point of reference, is an old fee sheet. And this is from back in the late 90s when Schwab was just launching online. You can see that they were still charging a percentage of the cost of every trade that you did for your brokerage experience. You have a $39 minimum, and you get commission as a function of the transaction size. So yeah, let's think about this. So a $40,000 trade today, if you go online, is free, right? I mean, there's a lot of underlying things that go on when you do a free trade. But when you buy a $40,000 security, you should not pay money, is what the individual investor thinks in 2023. Now, at that time, you were going to be paying about $188 if you placed a single $40,000 trade. If you're rebalancing quarterly, that's going to cost you about 2% per year. That's $800. Nobody wants to pay that. But nobody also wants to trade in just a single stock, do they? We want to have a diversified portfolio. Let's have at least 20 individual securities. And let's rebalance those 20 individual securities every single quarter. And let's do it with a $40,000 account. What does that cost us? Well, if you have 20 stocks and you're using that same fee sheet that we just looked at, you are paying a $30 per trade entry point, as well as a 1.3% on the basis cost of every trade that you're placing. I did the math for us because it's like a cooking show. You don't want to watch all the math take place, but I'm telling you, it is a $680 additional cost on top of a $600 base. You're paying about $1,280 to do a 20 stock portfolio rebalance every single quarter. If you rebalance every quarter, you're paying about $5,120 for the benefit of managing a 20 stock portfolio. That's a lot of money. You're going to be out of money in about 1, 2, 3, it's about 8 quarters, isn't it? So in 2 years, that's your whole portfolio. Just think about this. This was the 90s. 30 years later, we have a different situation. Mutual funds. Actually, let's not take it forward to today. What this actually brings us into is the world of mutual funds. So in an era where a 20 stock portfolio for a small investor is prohibitively expensive, the mutual fund absolutely makes sense at varying price points. But again, if we look at this worksheet, we can see that your mutual fund trades cost $39 for a trade. And although there are additional costs on top of this, there's a 0.7% of principal cost just to do the transaction. Doesn't sound cheap to you today, does it? To purchase a mutual fund and for the benefit of that fund purchase, pay over 1% when you buy the shares. Compared to what came before, the mutual fund was a really big breakthrough. And so you were now able to purchase an individual portfolio that consisted of 20 stocks for thousands of dollars less than it might have cost you. And in 2019, take it all the way to today, we finally get to this period of time where stock trades are free. The hammer falls, fees go to zero. And here is your Omaha company, TD Ameritrade headquarters. I've been there. It's an important institution if you're in Omaha, Nebraska, in addition to Warren Buffett. But they drove fees to zero, and everybody followed shortly thereafter. And so, as we humans so often do, the new normal becomes the going forward normal. We now have access to trades that cost $0. And we saw the rise of mutual funds give way to not just mutual funds, but we have exchange traded funds, which are the baby brother to the mutual fund. They're a fund which consists of the same basket of securities, but they trade like a stock on the exchange traded funds. And we have John Bogle's index fund. That's right, Johnny Bogle on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen there was the father of the Vanguard Investments Fund, who famously stated that index funds eliminate the risks of individual stocks. You don't have the risks of buying individual shares anymore, or sectors, or even the managers of mutual funds. Only the stock market risk remains. So show of hands if you know what direction the stock market tends to go. It goes up and to the right, right? So if your trajectory is up and to the right, then the one thing that you want to reduce is your drag, which is fees. And John Bogle famously was the guy that helped millions of investors find their way to zero cost funds. So direct indexing is the next step, I believe. And so if we take it back to the definition, we're buying individual stocks or securities. We are buying things just like the mutual fund, just like the ETF. But wait a second, we're doing it in a slightly different way. And so the anatomy of a direct index account is I think helpful to take a look at. So direct indexing in view consists of a way in which we can buy information, technology, financials, industrials, etc. We can get that basket of securities that give us a diversified portfolio of assets. Here is the S&P 500 on a molecular level. Let's just pretend these little pools of color represent the different sectors of the US investable universe. You want to have full access to this entire bubble, but you don't want to pay for it. Well, you can do that in a direct indexing way. It's very fascinating. Your individual account is the little bubble here. Your individual account can have bits and pieces of the stock market in a way that is just like your mutual funds and exchange traded funds. But that's your account though. Okay, that that experience that you have is now totally different because your account no longer just has a single holding, which is kind of a black box owned by the mutual fund, inside of which presumably are the securities. Your account can have all of the holdings that consist of the S&P 500, and that makes it that makes it more obvious what you own. And it gives us the ability as investment advisors, investment managers, to build you whatever you need in terms of your I don't want to get ahead of myself, but every investor should have a portfolio of assets that is specific to them, should they want to optimize their chances at succeeding at retirement. Well, how do you optimize it if you have big buckets that you can purchase from? It gets a lot easier when we can buy specific compositions of assets for you. And so a moderate investment, uh, right here, your 60 stock, 40% bonds investor, is free of transaction costs in this day. Remember TD Ameritrade and the zero cost trades, and it's maneuverable in a way that wasn't previously possible. You're not the mutual fund manager, so you couldn't previously make any decisions about what was in your account. So, what are the specific advantages of direct indexing? Well, we talked about enhanced tax efficiency. Tax loss harvesting is going to be where I focus here. And so tax loss harvesting is essentially looking at every individual's specific tax situation and making decisions from their specific point of view. Okay, so this is a client account with no names associated with it. For each person, we all have a gains and loss situation that's unique to us. If I make $200,000 per year, my marginal tax bracket is my marginal tax bracket. I am pushing up into the higher brackets. And so when I capture gains from selling appreciated stocks, I'm going to get taxed more than the person who's currently making $10,000 a year. So I have a specific tax liability that's specific to me. So what direct indexing does for us is it allows us to look at those stocks inside of our portfolio and see at all times what is going on. And we can set thresholds for gains, for losses, for all the things that are happening inside of the portfolio that are specific and unique to us. It's a secret weapon, and it hasn't previously been available to us until now. Just give you a second to just let this sink in, because that's technical and that's probably a lot. But let me just reiterate again. By example, if you want to suppress your gains, for example, to avoid a known high tax regime, let's just say you're temporarily dealing with a flat 28% regime on gains. And you know that you would rather not take any gains right now. Well, then you can choose. If you have a directly indexed portfolio, you can choose, because you have 10 stocks in that portfolio. Maybe one stock is up 10%, and you should probably sell it. And another stock is down 10%. You've got one that's up 10%. You've got one that's down 10%. Well, hang on here. In a mutual fund, it's irrelevant. In fact, you don't even get to see what's in the portfolio. It's irrelevant. But in your portfolio, you owner of the direct indexed portfolio, you can see these 10 stocks. And you, either on your own or with the assistance of your advisor, can say, I would like to do the following. And you could sell the 10% gain, and you can sell the 10% loss. You can net them against each other, and you have zero tax burden for you this year. That's pretty cool if you're in a high tax regime. Example B, imagine you're in a lower tax bracket right now, and you know in the future you have something coming. Maybe you're inheriting money in the future, or perhaps you're moving to a country where the tax regime is going to be a lot higher. You have other choices you can make now. All the buttons and levers inside of your portfolio are in full view. So you can actually pull the lever that says recognize gains. You remember that worksheet that I showed you with individual investor? This person sees that they have unrealized gains in their portfolio right now. If they know that they're going to be moving to a country that has a higher tax regime, well, then they can say, Mr. Portfolio, can you just kick out all of my gains now? Because I don't want to pay them in the future, because my tax rates are going to be much higher in the future, again, you have this new tool. If this is hard for you, it's because this is new. You hadn't been able to even think about this before, but now you can sell everything that's at a gain now, and you can build your pile of losses, such as it is, and you can take those losses in the future when you're in a higher tax bracket. So you see, you can be strategic about how and when you are taxed, and if that is a big deal to you, you know who you are, then 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 you're welcome, because this is a really interesting capability to have. Personalization. In the past, you could take a fund manager's word for it. You could buy Fund A that says that they are the world's leader in ESG values, and you could probably get that by buying their mutual fund. But now in a direct indexing portfolio, you get to pick for yourself. Here we have a menu of all of the options that we can deny entry into your portfolio. You can take everything from abortion and adult entertainment to tobacco products and whale meat. You can create your own variations. You can create what I think of as the Sharia law edition. If you are an individual who cares about bacon, baleen, bologna, you can design your own portfolio, which prohibits your own no-no list of companies that you do not want to have invested. And if you think this isn't powerful, hold on a second, because every one of us votes with our dollars. Okay, and so if prescriptively everyone had access to this and they could vote with their investment dollars, you could see all of these things have reverberating effect on corporate behavior, and it is already something that's happening. So you get personalization, you get reduced costs. As we said, you remember these guys, uh, you know, the cost is now zero for doing individual trades. So while in the past, 20 years ago, you couldn't think of doing trades. And 10 years ago, you were thinking, just buy me that index fund because that's the only way I can hope to be diversified almost for free. We're in a new world now. Okay. And according to the ICI Research Institute in 2022, the average expense ratio for mutual funds is still a thing. It's still 0.44%. So if we can pay less to get more, then we ought to do that. I think is how most of us usually view this type of decision. And then the last but not least, although I think of it as the most dangerous concept of all, improved performance potential. The customization inherent in direct indexing gives you opportunities to capitalize on market inefficiencies. I'm talking about, we can say that we'd like to skew our investment towards a specific strategic sector. I don't at all recognize. I don't recommend this for everyone, but we have discussions like this as investment advisors with those of our clients who have views. And so some clients look at the world of apples and they go, that one right there, it's rotten. Okay, I don't care if it's your ESG motives, maybe it's tech in 2022 because you have a crystal ball. There are additional buttons and levers. Once again, we can say, I don't want to have anything to do with energy in 2023, for example. We can run the portfolio in that way. And as I pointed out here, real stock picking, even at the sector level, even when we look at the global level, is never, ever this straightforward. So accept that caveat, such as it is. Now, why direct indexing matters for Americans abroad. And this is one of my favorite topics because it gets into how the road has risen up to meet us if indeed we have decided to move to another country. So number one, there are unique financial challenges that we have, i.e. taxes, are never the same from country to country. And so what we have here is from, I think this is a TurboTax graphic that depicts the global look at personal income taxes. There are different tax rates that affect us in different countries. And so if you know me, you know that I, for example, favor Portugal. and understand Portugal's tax laws very well. So during the first 10 years that you live in Portugal, you can subscribe to a tax regime that is different. And in that time, you may also have different opportunities to recognize different kinds of taxes as a consequence of your investments. I'm not going to get into the details of that because it's beyond the scope of this call. But just let me tell you that if you have the ability, once again, to access all the buttons and levers that are relevant to your portfolio, you can, in fact, make decisions which could have positive consequences, provided you get ahead of this with enough time. Again, from country to country, there are regulatory variations. Expats might have limited access to certain options due to local regulations. For example, if you live in Europe, the European Union in 2018 has introduced a prohibitive protocol. It's called the MIFID protocol, updated to MIFID number 2 in 2019, which has made it impossible for any individual who lives in the European Union to purchase US investment products. And I'm talking about index funds, mutual funds, ETFs. And so hold on, we just covered this. Those things can be replicated and at a lower cost and with more strategic intent with your direct indexing. And so if you are under that protocol and you think that this is a problem, then you may have found an answer in what we are talking about, because you can buy the index and you can be the index. And that is indeed the purpose of the approach that's called direct indexing. It's crazy how quickly the road has risen up, as I've said, to meet us. Limited investment choices. Again, there might be some new limits introduced on your choices. If you are abroad, that is the same as what we just discussed, which is MIFID. It might prohibit you from buying some of the diversified funds that you like and are used to, and that is why the approach that we use is so valuable, because this 60-40 portfolio, impractical to purchase if you don't have access to mutual funds and index funds, etc. But again, if you have this new tool, if you have access to the approach that we call direct indexing, you're not limited. It's a way of recreating the same exact kind of portfolio that people have been seeking to create for decades, and doing it for less, and doing it with a little bit less muss, a little bit fuss, a little bit less muss. We're getting towards the end of the hour here, and so if you're still with me and you're so patient, thank you. But there are some additional items that we can focus on with regards to it. Diversification beyond broad indices. That is to say, if you want to buy a diversified index and you want to make it very specific to something that you love specifically, we have access to direct indexing that gives us, like, cybersecurity, for example. There are various ESG options that exist. For example, you can tune your investment portfolio to whatever setting suits you most specifically. And the only thing that keeps us from doing that is, well, is the relative newness of what this approach is, which is, I guess, why I'm talking about it today. The fund limitations, once again, every fund manager that manages a mutual fund, you don't know what that individual or team's predilections are. If you can manage the individual stocks, you and or your advisor can take a look at what's being invested in. You don't have to rely on mutual fund managers to make those decisions for you. And flexibility and control. Now, I don't know if you've faced any of these issues. I know I'm a professional and I am a professional nerd, and some firms are strange with how they do this. They force you to accept highly complex structures, Rube Goldbergian in nature at times, where you have multiple accounts. Well, the nice thing with direct indexing, this technology tool, it allows you to keep that to a minimum. So you have one account and you can invest in a number of investment themes without having to go wild with the structure of your investment accounts. Implementation, it's my least favorite subject, actually. I saw some people come in late here, so hopefully you have Q&A because I covered the juicy stuff at the top of the hour. Implementation, um, let's go best. Partnering with professionals. Okay, this isn't self-serving, what I'm about to say, but it can be helpful in case your head is swimming just a little bit already, because this is a new concept. It can be helpful to talk one-on-one with somebody that knows how to do this. So collaboration with advisors that specialize in these strategies, it is crucial, at least at first. Like many things, once you get used to it, it doesn't seem so wild. Investment strategy alignment. I showed you the 60/40 portfolio a minute ago. There's nothing new in this concept, that you should be taking the right amount of risk for you. I spoke with somebody yesterday that was all in cash, because of course cash is always safer, but you got to know what your other options are. And so you really have to choose a strategy that's aligned with you. Maybe it's not cash. Maybe it's a 4% income that you're trying to get from your investments. Whatever the case, the thing about direct indexing that can be difficult is you can take any approach to investing with this that you like, and of course you got to monitor. I don't know anybody that's healthy that doesn't keep track of their health on a daily basis. Okay, I don't care what you do, if you have a Fitbit or if you just check out your weight daily. You've got to continuously and pretty rigorously monitor what's going on, and that includes the tax implications. That includes all of the things that I'm only pausing because I'm realizing I'm kind of repeating myself. But the tax implications and the efficiency that you get in taxes, as well as being compliant with international reporting, bottom line, that's all part and parcel to what we're trying to do here. So I am almost done. I'm going to do a quick case study first, and then I'm going to take questions and answer, and then I'm going to be uploading us to YouTube. So please, if you have some questions, chamber those right now, because I will be taking us to Q&A in just 1 second. So case study for young Carlos, an American expatriate. He's been living and working in Portugal for a decade. He builds his financial future in a foreign country, lucky Carlos, and he has been diligently saving and investing for retirement. He's concerned about tax implications and inefficiencies resulting from his current investment strategy. He's a smart guy. Now, the challenge here, Portugal has different tax laws, unique tax laws, including different rates and regulations associated with capital gains and with income compared with the US. And so Carlos very rightly is concerned with the overall balance sheet. How is the ledger penciling out if he lives in two countries effectively? Because if you're from the United States, you're never really free of having to report your taxes in the US. And now Carlos is also in Portugal. So how does he figure all of this out? So his solution, surprise, surprise, is in this situation, it's using the direct indexing approach. And so what we do here, let's say Carlos is talking to someone like me, is we look at his current slate of investments and we don't do anything first. We look at what's happening inside of the investment portfolio, and then you must compare it with what's going on in the US and with what's going on in Portugal. And you have to figure out what kinds of customizations can be effectuated. And so you have to really kind of bifurcate your brain and see into these two ledgers and do a reconciliation to see if you can make any changes. And you oftentimes can, because once again, what we are doing here is we're oftentimes sort of cherry picking the gains and we're cherry picking the losses, and we're combining those and throwing them into a bucket as we build our new portfolio, and we're creating a transition that's tax optimized. So, again, in the old days, sometimes you would have been told to just sell everything, hit the dump button, and move on. But you don't have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that, because you have an optimal choice that we can get to, and you can look at a spreadsheet or have somebody else do it for you. And you can make sure that you're tax optimized and that you're compliant with whatever regulatory environment in this case two, that Carlos lives in. So he has to adhere to the EU guidelines concerning US investment products. And so he ensures that he aligns with the regional restrictions, because Carlos must be on the international platform for Charles Schwab, where he has to tell them that he's not going to buy any new mutual funds. And while being totally compliant with EU guidelines concerning investment products, he goes and builds his whole new investment portfolio. It is just like that. It's not just like that if you're not using direct investment in stocks. And then, of course, beyond that investment moment, Carlos must do ongoing monitoring, both for the investments themselves, especially if Carlos has opted to have some sort of special blend of investments, and he wants to make sure, for example, that there's no whale meat in the portfolio. We want to have ongoing maintenance with regards to that, and of course the tax piece, because at least in my world, taxes can be the silent killer for your money. That, at least with this approach, we can address. And so, bottom line at Carlos, it is yes, tax savings, check. You get a level of personalization, double check. And again, we can get into trouble with this, and there is no promises around this. But if you are pursuing a particular style, it's possible at times that you can enhance those after-tax returns. But again, caveat emptor with regards to it. So I promised Q&A is coming. Give it 3 minutes, because I'm going to revisit the premises of what we do as financial planners, and especially in the cross-border world, we get ahead of things. So if you are looking at this and you are pre-move, well, let's talk. Or at least email and ask me some questions, or steal some of this information, because if you're before you move, there are some interesting tax decisions that you get to make that you can't make later. Acclimation, that's sort of like the moments just after you've moved. You're getting acclimated to your new life, and in that moment there are still some pre-move decisions that you can make, because possibly you haven't become a tax resident of your new host country yet. And then after that, then you need to move into what we think of as kind of integration. You've already made your decisions. You have already sort of transitioned to this new world, and now you got to make sure that the boat is set up, it's ship shape, and now you're just trimming the sails and making sure that you're staying on course, because you want to be independent and you want to be strong as a retiree in your new world. And that actually is not at all something we're going to speak to today, but it's some of my favorite things, which regards charitable gifting, Social Security and Medicare planning, making sure your estate plan is up to date. And so, believe it or not, folks, we're at a 40-minute mark. Now, I saw some folks came in late. Don't worry. I'm going to post this to YouTube because I, too, like to listen to some of my favorite podcasts on the treadmill. But at least for now, that's my prepared information. So I'm going to go ahead and take questions and answers if you have them. I know that this was a dense topic, but I'll open up the, okay, I have one question, and you don't have to raise your hand. I think you can jump into the Q&A. At the bottom of the screen, there should be a little questions and answer dialog box, and you can go ahead and fire away at will, and I'll try to take questions as I get them. And while I wait, I will again just sort of repeat the premise here. Uh-oh, we had a logistics issue. I'll repeat the premise here. We were talking about direct indexing. We were talking about how direct indexing affects you and is relevant if you're in a cross-border world. And the logistics issue is that I started very early. That would explain, okay, why we had some late adopters. Well, you're in luck because I did record the whole thing, and it's going to be available tomorrow. So ask questions, and I will give answers for you right now. But I apologize. You'll be able to hit the go button again tomorrow if you would like to. I apologize. Does this matter for IRAs? or how does this potentially work in an IRA? That is a great question. It's actually one of the more exciting questions. Okay. Okay. Yeah. That might sound weird that it's exciting, but I find it amazing. So for cross-border individuals specifically, this is an interesting uh, turn of events, because if you move to Portugal, in my case, you will learn that the Portuguese tax authorities do not view IRAs as tax advantaged at all. And so if you are properly observing your reporting obligations on your IRA accounts, you will notice that your capital gains, your interest, your dividends, these are all going to be considered taxable in the normal way. And this is a wild concept for those of us that have grown up in the United States and have managed our accounts in the manner that is appropriate to us in the United States. Those IRAs, for example, could have highly appreciated stocks. I had a client who had an $800,000 position he bought for $200,000 this year. He didn't know about this. And so he was very surprised when I advised him to sell that $800,000 position. And if he wanted to keep it, that's fine, but buy it back a day later. What's interesting about direct indexing is it will also enable this approach across the whole portfolio. Okay, so you could take that $800,000 position and replace it with an $800,000 position. That's one way to do this. But the way that I like to do this is actually build a totally responsibly diversified portfolio in the IRA and still be tax smart in that portfolio as if it were a taxable portfolio. That concept would seem totally bizarre to you if you were just a US based person or a US based advisor, because who cares? But if you're now living a life here, then you have to care, because your portfolio is now held to a different standard. And what's really cool about direct indexing is that you can conform to that standard and you can win at that game right from the start. So if that doesn't make sense to you, I don't blame you, but definitely follow up with an email. And I'd be happy to explain it to you one-on-one, or have someone from my team talk to you. I have a question about LLC and income coming from a U.S.-based LLC. Boy, this is a smart crowd, because that is also a very I would say that's a high priority topic to understand, and it's not really specifically something that I intended to speak within the scope of today, but I'll take it. The LLC structure also is a opportunity in a way, because the LLC structure for the Portuguese tax authorities, at least in 2023, is a structure which still is somewhat different than the way we think of it in the United States. In the US, if you're a single person LLC, the LLC is mostly an extension of you, and it can be with the way that you file your taxes. So you see it as sort of a pass-through entity. The company made $60,000 and you distributed it to yourself. You made $60,000, and all of the expenses are the same. They're all attributed to you. What's interesting is the Portuguese tax authorities don't see it this way. They see it as a separate entity from you. And so that opens up various tax opportunities in which you can actually claim income from the LLC as dividend income from a foreign country. And that kind of income is attributable to you under a different schedule. And so that is an interesting opportunity. And that is an opportunity that can be combined with what we're doing here with direct indexing. You want to be tax smart in that company that you're a part of, and you want to just receive the income from that company in a certain way, then we can do that. And I realized that was a mouthful. So again, if you want to talk a little bit more specifically with me, I know the person who asked that question. I'd be very happy to take you through it one-on-one, and draw some pictures, because it's a little complicated. Can you speak generally to the fees for your services, including guidance and holistic planning? That's a specific question. So the fees that all investment advisors charge, at least fiduciaries that are also a registered investment advisor, they are surprisingly the same for most investment firms. And when we do this kind of direct indexing, the additional fees are entirely sort of covered within the kind of the standard entry rate. So the investments, the strategy, running the strategy, and doing all of the highly specific tax planning that that I sort of alluded to throughout this discussion, it's all covered within our management fee for you, and it's not exactly the same for every person. So I'm not gonna quote a room full of people today. It's dependent on a few different things, but it's all covered within the sort of within the rack rate, as we like to call it. Does this matter for IRAs? Okay, I think I answered that question already. Thank you for asking, though, because that was sort of one of my favorite questions. That took me a while to answer. This direct indexing topic was inspired by exactly that issue. I'm going to wait for a few more questions, and I'm going to tell a personal anecdote. When I was in college, I managed a video store, and I feel a little bit like that moment where we all jumped onto Netflix when it comes to this strategy. It didn't seem obvious to us all at the time, but streaming services were going to change the way that we consumed media. And I do think that what's happening here has the potential to be another sort of brick in the wall that we all stand on with regards to investing on a go forward basis. And so that's part of the reason that I felt this worth talking about for a good, now on to about almost an hour of time. It's an interesting topic, and it happens to be vitally important to us if we're engaging with the cross-border topic. Can you also speak? Okay. Oh, I don't have any more questions right now, guys. But I guarantee you that you will have some just as soon as I hit stop. And so if that is the case, then I'm at your beck and call. So if you know me already, you know that I'm a passionate professional. Happy to help answer any questions one-on-one if you have them. If not, you want to just continue to be a looky-loo here in my seminars that I'm going to continue doing, then please do that as well. I'm only happy to share the knowledge that I gain. So if there's no more questions, and I think that that is it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go give you the rest of your day back. But you've been very patient, been a great listener. And as always, it's a pleasure being with you. Hopefully we'll see you here again. Bye-bye.